do. Okay. I don't know how much memory I've got on this machine here. So I put it on the cloud, and then they send me an email and everything comes out okay. So anyway, but I can start out. I can ask John a question here because I ordered this book. My brother sent me this book. I said I wanted to read Das Boot, and so he sent it to me on Amazon, and I started reading it, and I had an issue with it because, well, I haven't gotten that far into it, but they go through the first part that says, "Oh, what it's, what is a fool? How does a fool behave?" And it says all the things that a fool does, and then it goes into what is rajasic behavior, what is tamasic behavior, and what is sattvic, the three gunas, which I'm familiar with. I already had an idea what that was about. But then I'm going into why are they going into so much detail about how one should behave when there's no one to behave? It just seems like a contradiction. If there is no person, how is it that they're trying to advise people to regulate their behavior unless they're speaking to the uninitiated? Is that what it's about?
I mean, the whole Das Bodhi, it's a whole spiritual kind of lecturing between master and disciple and just clearing doubts. And to give the attributes of a fool, you're going to compare in and say, oh, because it says, if you have any of these things, then make sure you drop that. If it'll talk about, like, these are the things a fool does. And it's basically the neti. Okay, here's all the attributes of a fool. Here's all the attributes of rajas. Here's all the attributes of tamas. Here's all the attributes of sattva. And as it goes deeper into the book, it's saying that all of these are appearing on the attribute lists. So these are like discarding.
It just still makes me wonder who's doing that, who's doing the discarding, because it seems...
Well, you, the selfless self, with the ideas and beliefs and conditioning you're holding about yourself in that particular form you're believing yourself to be, that you are not. Just like when you ask Maharaj the questions.
Yeah.
It's just, these are doubts that are arising in the listener's mind. And they always say, may the listener pay extreme attention, because that's the listener that you are, not the listener you believe yourself to be. The listener you believe yourself to be is the one that the doubts are being cleared.
Oh, okay. So it's directed toward the one who thinks that they're a doer.
Well, it's directed because he says, may the listener pay attention, because it's, again, all of it is just to invite the attention of the invisible listener. The invisible listener starts to sift. I think they talk about like sifting the wheat and the chaff and this, and that's all this is just like, it's going through a question and answer type thing of, okay, these are the attributes of a fool, these are the attributes of this, and then the attribute list. Just like it talks about, I think it starts to talk about the world and how the world came out of the illusion, and illusion means everything that is not, and this is how it was built. You know what I mean? It's like it's saying, this is how the illusion is being built. But it starts out saying that it's illusion. There's nothing there. That absolutely it's that you are the formless, attributeless self that are believing all these forms and attributes on yourself. It's just a neti and a way of doing self-inquiry. It's a good book, definitely.
Yeah, because I was thinking it's sort of what do you call it? An expansion of the commandments, because if you look at all of the commandments, the virtuous person looks at it and says, okay, I don't do all that stuff, I mean, so that doesn't apply, so it goes.
But these are the behaviors that you try to activate.
Yeah.
You try to be a little less selfish. It talks about the fool harbors things and goes out and tries to protect his family and his family name and all that. And these are the things you don't want to do. So it's, the whole idea of the spirituality is to live it. and to act as if knowing that the world is absolutely illusion. And the book tells you that in thousands of different ways, and then tells you, you know, try to give of yourself, try to do more bhakti and do more devotion, and the master and how you're doing the devotion, and these things that are the attributes of the foolish you don't want to have. So it's telling you about your spiritual life.
Yeah, but you know, I like the idea that it's for the people that are grounded in the truth of themselves. All that's unnecessary. You know, it's like, you know, the you don't have to be told how to behave if you already know that.
Well, and remember, it talks about the seeker, the aspirant, and then the siddha, the realized one, or whatever. And it gives all the attributes for that too. And you can kind of, like Maharaj is always saying, you know where you are in that line.
Right.
And so you know how to proceed from there.
Right. Yeah, it just seemed to sort of superfluous to read about, oh, yeah, you shouldn't do this. And you should, you know, this is a fool, you know, like, oh, do I really need to know this? You know, I don't really want to spend a lot of time thinking about that kind of stuff. You know, it seems like obvious to me, but then, you know, I don't know.
But if at all you identify as a body mind, you will find yourself in the fool.
Yeah.
There will be attributes that you can say, oh, yeah, you know, I do have this. Because that's what it's saying. If you're still identifying yourself in any way as a body mind, then you're a fool. And the sattva, rajas, and tamas, if you're still identifying your behavior as being, you behave in this way, and not the fact that it's just the gunas kind of moving around through the ether, so to speak, and the gunas are the ones that are providing the action, then again, then it's saying, okay, then you believe yourself to be a rajas person or a tamas person. And it's at the very different various levels too, you know, depending on where you are in your spirituality. And the book gets deeper and deeper and deeper into itself too. It starts out, you know, even when it starts to talk about the formation of the world, and it starts with, you know, in the illusion, there was movement in the illusion, and that created wind. But it starts out like illusion, and then tells you how the illusion was built, this illusionary world, because the mind wants to know, hey, what's the cause, what's the effect, how did this world come about? Well, the world is completely false, but to please the mind, it kind of builds, this is how the world was created.
Yeah, basically a projection of the mind.
Yeah, I mean, and it's because the mind is always going to ask questions about things to keep itself active.
Yeah. Keep itself in business.
Yeah, pretty much.
The factory owner has to keep in business.
Yeah. Well, like, your attention, your power fuels that. And the more you pay attention to that mind, the more that whole factory, like Maharaj says, the factory is working. And rather than you be the owner, you believe yourself to be one of the employees down on the floor who's suffering, creating all these thoughts for yourself.
Yeah. Okay. I haven't got that far into it. I just got to the three gunas. I haven't gotten any further.
Right. Well, and a lot of people stop at the whole where it says, you know, okay, let's praise Ganesh and let's praise this and let's praise that. A lot of people are like, you know what, I'm not reading that part. But the whole idea is that from start to finish, you'll see the pattern of, like it says, it's a dialogue between master and disciple. And the way the book ends is really cool, because it's basically saying that, of course, the guy couldn't be saying all those things because it's only selfless self. So selfless self is now teaching itself in you to remove these things, to be aware of your own self.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting because there are, you know, these masters, so to speak, you know, throughout the ages. And they, you know, some of them are pretty outrageous in terms of their behavior. So you just say, oh, well, that's the selfless self doing that, you know, instead of like, oh, that person must not really have it because how could they do that? You know what I mean? It's a misunderstanding of, because they're free and they're not bound by the normal, constraints of, moral behavior, let's say. Maybe they're just, I mean, there's all kinds of saints who are just people like Rajneesh, Osho, things like that, that were sort of off the rails in some respects.
But remember too that Maharaj talked about the 6 signs of this spirituality being with you. Patience and tolerance and forgive and forget. These things, these attributes will come about. You'll witness these attributes in yourself.
Yeah.
So the whole idea of the mad saint and all that kind of stuff is, well, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I don't know about that either. I don't understand how they could be so brilliant. I mean, Osho is really brilliant when you read his work, and yet, his organization was all screwed up, with all the Rolls Royces and things like that. I mean, I don't know. That's sort of past, but maybe that was the old style of the guru.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, bygones.
I just listening to the recording I did of Das Boot last year, actually, and it's really good, actually. To me, I think in one sense he's addressing a very broad spectrum of audience or listener. I mean, it's just, and there's a lot of elements that are very much particular to that particular time in his own history. But I think like ultimately he is, as John said, that theme is running through, and every now and then it really comes very obvious. He'll mention it. The fact that this is all Maya, or everything is selfless self, basically. And, that comes, that he doesn't say it in that particular way, but, that's what he says. And, like I just started listening to it again, as I said, and I find, like I see myself in some of these scenarios, he goes into the tortures. I don't know if you got to that part yet. The tortures. The tortures are, like they can be, physical tortures, emotional tortures, catastrophic tortures like waterfall. Getting washed away in floods. People dying young, and then the tortures that one creates for one's own self, and so forth and so forth. And I see that in my own experience, and I see it around me. So it's kind of like it's very broad. I think it's just taking all of the manifestation kind of in both hands, the whole manifestation in all different expressions, and just kind of like addressing that kind of, and. When I recorded, as John, as you said, when I first started listening, recording it, actually, like the whole thing with Ganesh and so forth, we praise Ganesh, we praise Sarada or Saraswati, and to initiate the whole book, it's kind of like not my experience, not my kind of like, I'm not from that particular, milieu. I see that's where, for instance, Siddha Rameshwara, in Master Self-Realization, that's where he begins. First of all, let us praise Ganesh or Ganesh and Saraswati before we do anything else, and so forth. But it's really, that's an extremely powerful book. Das Boot. Which is really foundational, I think, in this whole lineage.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'll hang in there.
He, like in chapter 4, he gets into the 9 kinds of devotion. Yeah. And, there's, like the devotion, there's service of the master, narrations about God. I have a book by Eknath Bhagwat. Eknath, actually, it's Eknath Bhagwat. And it's, I know that Nisargadatta used that, and also, what's his name? Siddha Rameshwara used that in their teachings. And that's a beautiful book, and it's about Krishna, Lord Krishna, and it's a whole narration. So if you like a story format of coming at this understanding, that's really a great book. It's over 1,000 pages, by the way. And, but it's very historic. I mean, it's very kind of like time-bound, too, in its own historical context, the way things were expressed in that time and so forth. But with the 9 kinds of worship, the 9th type of worship is pure Vedanta, what we're studying basically. It's pure non-duality. And I know that Das Bodh talks about the need to have both those things in hand, worshiping God with qualities, with attributes, and worshiping God as that, selfless self. He kind of puts that there before us. And but his 9 kinds of devotion is really another, I think, important. That chapter 4, and those 10 sub-chapters is good too.
Yeah, I mean, I would highly suggest, in what I'm doing right now even, just before going to bed, reading just 1 chapter. It'll take a while, but again, remember, you're impressing these things. You're using mantra and these sort of things. So if you're sleeping after having read this, then your subconscious is continuously going and kind of listening to this while you're sleeping.
Yeah, it really works. It just works on you subconsciously.
Yes. Yes. It's clearing away. That's all, because again, like Maharaj says, it's the reader's story. So you wrote this for you to read you. You're the writer. You're the one who asked the questions. You're the one who's having the doubts cleared. You're the one that's clearing the doubts. And, that's, you read it like it was for you specifically. And any likes or dislikes or kind of different things like that, that's an attribute going on the attribute list. And that's what the book is all about, is removing these attributes, these various things that may be being held on to.
Yeah, they say that the subconscious is kind of like the, like an iceberg. The most of it is below the surface.
Right. And again, like Maharaj says, there's no conscious, no subconscious, no nothing. That is all when you're identifying with body and mind, individuality, the flow of thoughts, this and that. But for conversation purposes, the book is diving deep. And you, the writer and the reader, are recognizing that it's your story, just like selfless self, just like self-love, any of these different things. And it's hammering, constantly hammering. You are selfless self. You are selfless self. You have no attributes. You have no thoughts. You have no body. You have nothing. Nothing. Now go out and live like this, spontaneously knowing that you're nothing. That's it. And live happy and free.
Yeah, and if you fall off the wagon, it's not the end of the world.
Exactly. Then there's attributes either in the Rajas, Tamas, or the Sattva that you're seemingly still holding on to, or some of the foolish nature you've been clinging on to, some of the worldly tortures you're being affected by. These are all the different little check marks that you can say, aha, that's what that was.
Yeah.
You can kind of look at it and say, aha, that was oh yeah. It talked about that worldly thing. My sister off in Kansas is having problems with her husband and wants to come visit and this and that, and it's causing a lot of turmoil. Well, it talks about that in Das Bodh. Mm-hmm. It talks about that, or Das Bodh. I don't know how you actually pronounce it, Das Bodh or Das Bodh. Das Bodh, I guess, right?
I think so. I have always heard people say Das Bodh.
Das Bodh, okay.
Yeah.
It reminded me of that German movie, Das Boot, which is...
Yeah, Das Bodh.
Das Bodh.
What's the summary have to do with spirituality? When they were first I was like, I couldn't get it.
Indeed. Yeah, but I mean, any of these books, if you're reading like concentrate on the words and all of that. Just get into your own selfless self. You're behind the words, and you'll feel yourself behind the words that you're reading, and they'll impress upon you. That's why, like I said, just out of the blue, I started every night, and it's right by my bed in a Kindle format. I just open it, I click on Das Boot, read whatever it is, whoop, okay, go to sleep. And that's it. And it's just become this like night routine now.
Yeah, so you're trying to train your consciousness to go in that direction.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just because you read whatever it is, and some nights it's like, ooh, that's really good, and other nights it's like, oh, okay, you know, whatever. But the idea is you're hammering all the time, just like mantra, just like anything else. You're hammering all the time. You are Brahman, you are Brahman, you are Brahman. You're not this body form. There is no I am somebody else. I am somebody else is illusion. The world is illusion. All your thoughts and ideas and problems and beliefs are illusion because they have to deal with this illusory person that you're believing yourself to be, that you are not. And the entire world is coming from illusion. And it's just hammering over and over and over.
Yeah.
And I think it talks about the fact that, like, listening, the Shraddha that Maharaj talks about, you know, listening. And how to listen. And it even talks about how to listen in Das Bodhi, or Das Boot, sorry. And it says, you know, listen attentively without any sort of like trying to interpret. Just listen attentively. And it talks about the listening and how you listen and different things like that. And it seems very rudimentary, but like Maharaj says, when you're learning a language, A, B, C, so you're learning this and inscribing this, because it's not learning like book school and you're going to pass tests. Like they say, okay, for chapter 1, subchapter 7, here's questionnaire or whatever. But you are learning because you're engraving this. The invisible listener is constantly being aware that, you know, you're hammering, just like with mantra, just like with listening to the talks or reading these things. It's hammering all the time. So that eventually this illusion that you're still kind of holding on to, that, oh, I'm still kind of a person and this, it's just being hammered and hammered and hammered. And that's that like non-stop devotion. You know, you're bowing to the masters, you're doing the mantra as much as you can. When you're remembering it, you're doing in the meditation, remaining with your selfless self, not giving yourself away. You're reading these different texts, you're watching Maharaj video, all these things. It's like Maharaj says, it's that you're concentrating on the concentrator, always just impressing.
Yeah, always remembering that you are what is prior to everything that appears before you.
And it's just removing doubts. Das Boot is literally, I mean, it always talks about, that's how he finishes every chapter, of enough of this. You know what I mean? Like he goes into great detail about this is how the illusion is, and this is this, this is this. And then he goes, okay, enough of this. Yeah. In the next chapter, we'll talk about some other thing that you might be believing in that we'll be discarding.
Right.
You know, and that's good. And it does it very systematically. You know, just like in our lineage, it's very scientific. It's step by step by step. And I think Siddharameshwara Maharaj in Master of Self-Realization actually talks about how he talks. He presents a situation that's absolutely false in the light that it's real, and then dissolves the ideas that he built on the concept to make that thing appear real that was not. And by the end, then, you've seen it being built and the concepts that he used to build this falseness, and he discards.
You know, like did that with the 4 bodies, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, the 4 bodies.
Exactly. You know, it's like, yes, we are the mind, and the mind does the, you know, and then it's like, it deconstructs that concept after he's pronounced, okay, we're not this, we're this. So now you've gotten rid of that. And it's like climbing a ladder. okay, we've gotten rid of this idea that we're this. Now we say, yes, we're this. But then we deconstruct that idea and we say, well, okay, then we can't be that. But most definitely we're this. And like you said, the 4 bodies, he's just erase, erase. And he's deconstructing concepts, because just as you were in small child and grown up and all of this, that's how the concepts were impressed on you every day. They were hammered in. You're a person. You have to do this. You have to do that. And this. And the world is terrible and all this kind of stuff. In the same way that he's deconstructing the concepts, your concepts were added on to you.
Yeah, the process of deconstruction is really that. I hope it doesn't take as long as the process of. I have that many more years to live.
Well, no, and see, mantra allows, again, you can remain with your selfless self through mantra and observe the fact that these things are occurring without a thinker and an experience and an experiencer. It's just passing through. And your concentration, you're keeping the mind busy with mantra so it can't create stories based on what it's seeing you doing. And taking credit after the fact that I did this, and this is how it turned out. And because this turned out this way, I can repeat that process. Because that's where the whole desire and expectation comes in. I do something, my mind takes credit as the doer, and then says, we can continue to do this. We can keep doing this in this way. And then when it doesn't work out in that way, then it's all depression and sadness and all this kind of stuff. Because basically you're trying to just repeat something. That's where the expectation comes in. If I do this, then this will occur because this happened last time. And I think that's in the Bible, it talks about that, where he hit the rock and got water. And then he said, okay, no, it's not hitting the rock anymore. It's like hitting the sand or whatever. But he wanted to hit the rock because the rock is how he got the water before.
Yeah.
I think that's right. Right, Andrew?
I'm not sure, but I think you're right. Yeah, it's like doubting, a new command to do something different. Whatever.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
our thing is we want to repeat the same thing, believing that it's going to be the same way. And that's the conditioning. That's the desires and the fears and the expectations and all these things. Desire is to continue doing something, continue to feel something or get the same result of something. The desire to repeat an experience. But the truth is, you were not an experiencer doing the experience happened through you. But when the mind and the ego sense of self takes ownership of having done this thing, then it believes it can repeat this process and continue in this way. Because it's taken ownership and it says, I did this, so therefore it can happen again. And then there's frustration when it doesn't happen again because there's an expectation that this will be the way it is. And it's not. It's constantly changing. If you change with it, because you're not creating an experiencer who's desiring that same experience again in the same way, and we always say, like, it's never going to be as good the second time as it is the first time, whether it be a roller coaster or a new job or dating or any of these things. It's never going to capture that initial moment because that was spontaneous. And all the other things are to try to make it repeat that because a doer has been created that wants to do it again and believes that that experience can once again occur, and it's never the same because it wasn't the spontaneous experience or the spontaneous happening that was there. The desire is to repeat the spontaneous happening, and it won't be spontaneous. So therefore, there's something missing because there's a thought process, a mind, ego, intellect that's getting involved in trying to do something. And it ruins the experience completely.
Yeah, it's kind of like what you just described was the genius of the universe. Then it keeps on changing it just so you won't do that. You know what I mean? That's part of the lesson.
Exactly.
So
And that's why living from the point where you're not holding on to anything, you go with the spontaneity, and then every experience is fresh, is real, is true. Because there is no thought process of doing it. It's happening spontaneously, and you are there. You no longer have this mind, ego, intellect that keeps keeping in the past and comparing present experiences to past experiences and expecting them to be the same or better.
So, sort of a tendency of the mind or of the human is to want, you know, this desire to have things turn out a certain way.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Because we think we know how it's supposed to be.
Well, and again, looking at yourself as an individual rather than the selfless self. Because as Sky, then it can't turn out any other way other than the totality. Everything is as it is. It's only when you believe yourself to be an individual that there can be a cause and effect based on the point of view that I'm seeing and believing myself to be. Mm. But there is no individual, and nothing's happening for an individual. It's the totality acting. I think we talked about before the ecosystem where, you know what, there's too many little fish. So fish have to die off in order to get the balance of the ecosystem. But if you're a fish, seeing from the point of view of a fish, well, screw the ecosystem. We need, you know, we need to live.
Yeah, well, it's confusing because you get confused with the levels of things, the absolute, you know, which doesn't have any judgments or no good or bad, and then there's the relative where there is, you know, that. I mean, the body doesn't want to suffer.
Well, and again, these are, just consider that every body is just the 5 elements in a little package. That's all it is. And then you, the selfless self, are that power, that energy, that all of this is appearing on your presence and moving it around, and all the gunas are activated and all this. But this is an empty shell that's selfless self is in and powering and around, and this is also in that selfless self.
That's good, because I see myself trying to control things and, you know, mind trying to make things happen, and this is very helpful.
And whenever, you know, whenever there's the desire to make something happen, that's a beautiful time to do mantra, because you're already deep into I am somebody else who desires something to happen. But instead of having the mind go off and try to plan and scheme, mantra. And observe everything happening. You know, just like if you're going through troubled times, the best thing to do is mantra, because everything's going to be as it is. It's going to eventually turn around. Nothing's good forever. Nothing's bad forever. It comes and goes in this. But you're maintaining, you're continuing with yourself with mantra. You're remaining with yourself. And then your thoughts are not creating this experience. You're going through it without an experience, and an experience are being created because there's no story, there's no identity, there's no nothing. It's just, this is happening and this is not happening, and that's that. And you save yourself from all the suffering of creating an I am somebody else that's suffering through this experience. Mantra allows you to just dissolve this idea of I am somebody else, move through whatever's happening and be okay, because there's nothing there. Space moving in space.
Yeah, I can see. I can see identifying as somebody else who wants to be spiritual, who wants to get there, you know, that wants to get, you know, because what's the life about if you don't achieve enlightenment? You know, what happens if you don't have the spontaneous conviction and all that? But that's all just another kind of ambition, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, there is no, you are, like Maharaj has said many times, you are already realized, you're just not paying attention to the realized state.
Yeah.
You're paying attention to everything other than the realized. And, you know, that's the key, is pay attention to yourself. Your selfless self, without form, without attributes, nothing. And all of this seeming world comes and goes, and you just remain as you are. I just posted a video today on Facebook about Nisargadatta Maharaj talking about death.
Oh, yeah.
And it was very, very powerful. Of, you know, it's just like, okay, someone's going to say that there is death because The gunas are leaving, the breath is leaving, all of this is leaving, but being is going back to no being. But prior to being, there was no being. Being is what appeared in between the non-being. Like Maharaj says, the something in the nothing is returning to nothing. So that's all that's occurring, and that's it. There's nothing. There's no dying. There's no anything.
No, we see how much we sort of cling to this, whatever, this piece of rock that we,
Well, and like he says, you have been told, the Sadguru has told you that nothing is real, only your selfless self is real. So when you're leaving the body, leave in that way. Leave with the full confidence. Mantra, mantra, mantra. And I'm leaving, but I'm just going back to the totality. I'm going back to the non-being state. I will no longer be experiencing from the being state. I'm returning to my non-being. And the witness of both, basically. I'm returning to the formless knowledge, the knower of being and non-being. So there's nothing, and in that's then to take it to the most deep level, live like that every day.
Yeah.
Live like that every day. I am returning to the knower of being and non-being. So I am the absolute. Without saying, because you don't want mind to sit there and say, ooh, I'm the absolute. But the idea is that I'm the absolute that for a time believed that it was this form, that believed that this form world was real, that believed that there was a spiritual journey, that believed that there was a John on this spiritual journey who was progressing or regressing, but all of that was only for a time. Just like the dreamer, when he wakes up, all of that dream is gone. And only for a time. Only for a time. And then it's finished. And that's right now. From the realized state, you're already realized. You're not paying attention to the realized state. As Maharaj always says, you're neglecting yourself.
No.
You're paying attention to all these other things other than your selfless self. And Maharaj has said, mantra, remain with your selfless self. Give some time for you. Be normal, be simple, be humble. Be normal, be simple, be humble. Why? So that your mind doesn't sit there and get in the irritation of trying to succeed or trying to do more or trying to be greater than, or I need to be this spiritually enlightened guy, or that any kind of thing like that. These are all these ambitions in the illusory world. Imagine how if you were in your dream, you knew it was a dream. What ambitions? Would you have all these super ambitions of all this kind of stuff, knowing that when you wake up tomorrow morning, this character that you're using in the dream is finished? You still do your job, you do your duties, like Maharaj says. It's not a dry spirituality. It's practical, because you're using it, stepping forward, and you'll see when you start that movement and that stepping forward, the power is there that you are. The mantra is there. The invisible listener sees, okay, we're using this mantra, we're moving forward, we're no longer believing in this illusion, and we're acting in this way, and you'll start to communicate with the illusion based on this new sense of knowing yourself in a real sense. And the mind is automatically, we talked about before, mind only can present memories that it has had in form. It's never had a memory in the formless state, because the mind came after. Here's formless. Mind, ego, intellect came along with body in the form world. The memory and the mind cannot present any ideas, concepts, or beliefs in anything other than form. So knowing yourself in a real sense as the formlessness, all these ideas, concepts, memories, beliefs, expectations that are from form, based on this form world, are discarded. The same as if you had a little Lego community and you had these little Lego guys moving around and all that. You're not taking it seriously. There's not that bite of reality in it anymore. You know, you're not believing that this is the reality. You know the reality. The reality is this selfless self, this formless presence. And all of this is appearing on that formless presence. So nothing in the illusion should bother you, the selfless self. Therefore, you remain totally unconcerned with the world, just the same as if you are looking at a Lego community and all these things are happening, but it's absolutely not real. You know this is, or if you're watching a movie or a cartoon, you know that that's just not real. That's fiction. Well, the truth is, what you believe is real is fiction, and what you don't know is real is the reality. And mind can only present the fiction because that's all it knows. It was born in the false world. That's why Maharaj says, you have given birth to the mind. And then the mind sits there and tortures the you that you are not with ideas and beliefs about the form world that you are not actually in.
Yeah. Mind.
So stop that.
That's ridiculous.
But that's, you know, that's the discrimination. You start to see, this is form, this is form. I'm worried about this, I'm worried about that, or this or that. No, 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 no. I remain with my selfless self. I remain with that presence. Mantra, mantra, mantra. Remain with myself. Dedicate time for myself. Like Maharaj says, out of 24 hours, spend some time for you. You're spending time for your duties and your job and this and that, but spend some time for you. And not just sitting, just remaining with your selfless self. The best meditation is when you're moving around actively doing things that are not being done, that you know are not being done because you're remaining with your formless sense of self. You're remaining with the selfless self. Things are occurring, but no experience, no experiencer is being created. And you're just moving through.
And it seems like there'd be a different quality to your life because you are not in there trying to influence things.
Yeah, like we said, the first time you've ever experienced anything freshly, it was like, whoo, well, that's the reality. Everything is basically fresh, 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 because there's no going back to memory of how it would have been or how it was previously, and expectations then building based on how it was or how we're avoiding it this time. It's just in the moment, spontaneously. What needs to be done is done. Finish. That's it. Everything is just like the water. Maharaj says, pick it up, drink, put it down. That's every single thing in your life. Without taking ego. Ego is just the action to pick that up. You're using this body form to perform an action, and then it's finished. And moment to moment, there's no carrying over because there was no experiencer through mind and memory.
So there's no regrets because you just did whatever you did in the moment.
Well, again, remember too, if you remain with your formless self, all the things are being done in the form world that is appearing on your spontaneous presence. So anything that's done in this form world, you are not possibly doing because you are the formlessness that all of this is arising from. Again, just like in the dream, you're the dreamer, and you dream that terrible things are happening in your dream, but you're not doing any of it. You know, you're the dreamer, you're projecting this dream world, these things are happening. Maybe there's a war, and terrible things are happening in the dream, but you, the dreamer, you're not doing anything. You're providing, you're projecting, and all of these dream characters are acting through you, or you're acting through them, but with no sense of doership. Unless in the dream you're identifying as one of the characters that you believe, okay, this character is me. These other characters are like if you don't know you're dreaming, then you would identify with one character, and the other characters you would believe would be separate and apart from you, because you wouldn't know that you're the projector of the entire dream, and that all these characters, including the one you believe yourself to be, are just projections of your dream.
And in that case, you start trying to control the dream, like if you think one of the characters in a dream.
Indeed.
In a dream, there's no control. Anything can happen.
Indeed.
Same
here, but you believe that there's like cause and effect.
Yeah.
Because you believe yourself as one of the characters, firmly believe that you're one of the characters in the dream.
Well, then that would be kind of a lucid dream then, if you realized that you were dreaming and you were just creating the whole dream. If you realize that in the dream, then isn't that lucid dreaming?
I think lucid dreaming, yes. If you know you're dreaming, I don't know if you can actually control anything still, but you would know that you're this. I mean, even when you dream, you're dreaming from a perspective of I'm me in this dream. I'm seeing this thing. If you know a dream or not know a dream, you're like, oh, I'm seeing this thing from this perspective. And from form, again, as a formlessness, all of this is appearing on your spontaneous presence. So that's the dream. Everything that appears on the presence. Everything. Everything, because you are not a thing. You are the formless. That's everything in all things, everywhere, all the time. There's nothing but your own selfless self. And all of this is just an illusion projected on top of your spontaneous presence. Maharaj says you're the projector of the world. As when you're a dreamer, sleeping, you're projecting the dream world. And again, when you go to the level of the consciousness that's projecting the dream world and the consciousness that's projecting the waking world is exactly the same. So there is no difference between the waking state and the dream state other than your belief in it.
Well, that's what gets me a little, because I can see from this waking, state, that in the dream state that I'm I can see that, but it's harder for me to see that this also, you know what I mean? It's like that, you close your eyes and, bingo, you're somewhere else, and that's, well, you may not be aware that, but then when you come back to this state, you say, oh yeah, that was a dream. But it's not as obvious when you're here that this is a dream.
Because this is a long dream, and you're, again, trying to say from the position of the Kathleen that you believe yourself to be, that's where the dream world is being projected. This is not the case. The sky is projecting the dream. That Kathleen and John and Trish and Sandy and Andrew and everybody, that's in that dream. But it's sky that's projecting the dream, not a me, not a you, not a Kathleen. We're not projectors. We're actually objects in the dream.
Huh. But it does seem that dreams do have something to do with the character. You know what I mean? The character has certain kinds of dreams. Other people have different kinds of dreams because maybe their mind works differently. So it does seem to have something to do with the flavor of the character itself. I mean, the character.
In the consciousness. In the consciousness, yes. But the idea is that it's, and it's only as an analogy of laying down the dream world is projected. And it's because you can produce the sun, the moon, the stars. You can be active inside of it, holding a body. You can see when your eyes are closed, the physical eyes are closed, and yet this entire world has been projected. And that is you. That's your power. You're providing the projection in the dream, and you're providing the projection in the waking state. The same consciousness is projecting the dream and projecting the waking state. And again, in dream state or waking state, if you truly are holding on to the idea that you're an individual, then yes, it will be projected through an individualized sense of self. That's why we have mantra, to erase this, so that the dream is then projected just cleanly.
Oh, I see.
without any concepts, without any beliefs or ideas.
So there's nothing personal about the projection.
No. Again, it's sky.
Yeah.
Sky and space. It's just projecting.
It's only the identification that makes it seem personal.
Yes.
If it's not, then it's like, okay, this is just what's happening.
It's belief in the body mind that you believe yourself to be. And Maharaj has said many times, you are not body, you were not body, you're not going to remain the body. Body is not your identity because you never were a body.
Right. But I didn't really get that before, that's the connection between, what seems to be a personal thing and the fact that it's actually impersonal.
Well, everything that's personal has to do with a point of view, a
Right.
pin on the map.
Right.
If there's no pin on the map, then there's no local identification. It's just the absolute. There's nothing.
Right. Yeah.
It's only when there's a localized identification that I am this person who's trying to remain as the selfless self. And that's the I am somebody else, ego, trying to remain as the selfless self, but the selfless self doesn't need ego to remain as itself.
It's tricky.
Very tricky. Slippery.
Oh boy.
There's there's something in us that doesn't want to dissolve. That's the ego that's there. It's just what will be there if this individuality, this me dies, or dissolves. It's just there's that that's we're raised to really kind of like propagate that me, that individuality. Our whole education and everything else about our lives is simply that, to propagate that desire to be in a big sense, and this is completely in the different direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just really
Because even that I am is on that spontaneous presence and is dissolved, giving up that love to be, as Nisargadatta Maharaj says. You give up that love to be. You're just as you are.
And it's also the desire for meaning. It seems to me there's just this huge, what do you call it, momentum to have something be meaningful, to lead a meaningful life or we admire people who lead these amazing, do meaningful stuff. So, I mean, there's a kind of addiction. I mean, I'm just speaking for myself. It seems like,
Remember, everything has to be from the position of you.
Yeah.
And not worrying about others, because others are just characters that are also being moved around by you. And how can there be any meaning in the form world when you are formless?
Hmm.
Everything is basically, as Maharaj says, everything is meaningless
Yeah.
in the form world. The idea and the belief and the concept that I am this body, and my belief in the body creates the local identification and the point of view from where I see this world. The reality is not that. The reality is I know myself in a real sense, the formlessness, this presence, and everything is projected on that presence. Again, if we use the dream analogy, whether in your dream you're some great professor discovering scientific things, or whether you're a bank robber. In the dream, it's a dream. And that's why giving yourself away and saying, I really want to succeed, I really want to succeed, you're giving yourself away and further developing your illusion and the concepts inside of the falseness. You're taking the bait
Yeah.
rather than remaining with yourself. Your life will be as it is, but you're fully here without any anchors or weights or, without this past and expectations and the scenes, they're just fully here. But you're not, it's just, there's no nothing. But fully here. Using body, but not a slave to the body, which has mind, ego, intellect. And still being able to use mind, but not at all being used by mind. Using mind for like practical things, planning this, doing this, reading ingredients on how to make something like this or whatever. But in the moment, the psychological mind, the idea that I am somebody else who has to strive and struggle and do more and be better than this person or better than this or that, it's just not there. It's not there now, but there's a belief that there is.
Yeah.
And that's really the only difference, is that you believe that you're this character rather than knowing you're the selfless self that's in this projection. But this projection is only for a time, and then you'll go back to your selfless self without any ideas or beliefs being added on, without any attributes on the attribute list that you are.
Yeah, unless there's unfulfilled desires, in which case you'll be back.
And again, that's a concept. If you're believing in that concept, you have the power to create anything. You created this entire world through a concept, I am somebody else. So you have a lot of power to do these things.
Yeah, that's what's kind of scary, actually.
Well, know yourself in the real sense.
You could get yourself in a heck of a lot of trouble.
Well, I mean, the entire world is projected on your spontaneous presence. So everything, but if you're believing some concept, you can see right now, that's like taking birth. If you believe in some concept, this new concept, and much of spirituality and the spiritual seeking is, oh, this is a new concept, like what we just said. It's a fresh, new experience that I want to get more of.
Yeah.
And then eventually we just keep going until it doesn't work out. But all of those are concepts that give birth to more concepts, more concepts, more concepts. I go and I sit in satsangs, and then in the satsang, I'm really enjoying the guru that I'm listening to. But then a friend of mine that I just met says, oh, you have to try Swami Ramidami guy. And you're like, oh, yeah, Swami Ramidami, he was great. Let's go there, and that constant concept. And you keep getting more and more lost. And you don't spend time with your own self because you're planning so much time working harder to go on these retreats with a new Swami guy.
You just told my life story here.
Well, yeah. And
Yeah,
then
Trish, right? Let's go here, so-and-so.
Yeah. And it's constantly like that. That's in the nature of the illusion, is to continue the illusion. They say like Maya is very, very tricky. It's completely false, but you believe in it and then create this false world based on your belief in both yourself and the false world. And that there's going to be something to be obtained by this false self in the false world that's going to help you be more like your real self and not the false self.
Oh, dear. Yeah, that's how the wheel of samsara works, right?
Exactly. And you can look at that even in your thought process, the wheel of samsara, the birth of an idea or a concept, and then its life, and then its death, and then a new concept, and its birth, and its life, and its death, and it just keeps going and going and going. It doesn't just have to be the body form that goes through samsara. It's every new thought, concept, or idea that you add on to yourself takes birth, has a lifespan, has a death, and then another new concept is there. That's why mantra is beautiful, because mantra, you remain with your selfless self and you're erasing the concept slowly, silently, and permanently without giving birth to new concepts and new whole worlds of concepts.
Yeah, that's the vigilance of recognizing that that's another concept.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was reading this packet of, I think it's encouragement by Nisargadatta Maharaj that was sent to us. You sent to us.
Mm-hmm.
And this questioner says, well, you told me that I am the supreme reality. I believe you. What next is there for me to do? And he says, I told you already, discover all that you are not. Body, feelings, thoughts, ideas, time, space, being and not being, this or that, nothing concrete or abstract you can point out to is you. A mere verbal statement will not do. You may repeat a formula endlessly without any result whatsoever. You must watch yourself continuously, particularly your mind, moment by moment, missing nothing. This witnessing is essential for the separation of the self from the not self.
Yeah.
You know, I was going to ask you, I wanted to, you know, in regards to this sort of like focusing, just this attention, when one does the mantra, should that be in conjunction, this focusing and attention with doing the mantra, or, you know, like, for instance, doing the mantra, there should be just focusing on the mantra rather than focusing on what's, you know, all this kind of like stuff seething within, you know, these thoughts, ideas, feelings, impressions, whatever, you know, this should, you know, like, how do you put those two together? Or do you?
I mean, for my own self in mantra, it's inviting the attention of the invisible listener, and you can feel that sense of presence. Is like the concentrator is concentrating on itself through mantra. So you'll feel that. Like, and at the same time, the physical eyes are observing that the thought process is being with mantra and remaining with myself, and it's just naturally doing that discrimination. Oh yeah, this is not remaining with myself with self, remaining with mantra. You know, Maharaj talks about the breathing, to look at the breathing when you're doing that. Balseb Maharaj says concentrate on the tip of the nose if while you're meditating. But it's just remaining with your selfless self. And mantra just naturally starts to get that cleaning and clearing that you are there anyway. So all these thoughts are just covering you. And mantras back and forth, it's erasing, it's the antivirus software, and the virus is you, slowly, silently, permanently, it's cleaning this idea. The presence is always there. When all experience ends, there you are. And then you will sense that through mantra, and you'll remain with inward, looking, again, it's like you're seeing this outward world, but inwardly seeing it, knowing that it's being projected from inward, because all your attention, everything is in. Everything is remaining with your selfless self, remaining with your selfless self, the sense of presence. Like Nisargadatta Maharaj says, remaining with I am, remaining with selfless self, remaining with a formless sense of presence, remaining here. Seeing that the world is projected from this place. But I'm here. I'm just here. Just here. Mantra. Remain with your selfless self. Because that's really all there is. Everything that appears upon your spontaneous presence after that presence is illusion.
And that's what, you know, like in the beginning of Das Bodh, in the early chapters, he says that the only thing, you have nothing, absolutely nothing, it's all going to go. The only thing you do have is God, or selfless self, he says. Yeah. You know, but when you do that, yeah, it's, you know, like when you begin to repossess the building, like all the tenants start rebelling, and some crazy characters in there, you know, it's just,
yes,
they become very distracting.
Yes, but you just
remain, all these reactions going on, and so forth and so forth.
And remain with your selfless self. Just like I told you the thing about the jewelry store that I went into, and it was just rising. But remain with the selfless self. Remain with the selfless self. Because all of this is just like ghosts clanging around their chains and trying to be all scary. If you remain with your selfless self, the illusion passes because you start to see from that place. Nisargadatta Maharaj says, remain with the I am, that sense of presence. In every instance, go back into that. And if you continue to remain with your selfless self, then like Maharaj says, the Nisargadatta Maharaj says, the I am will be pleased and will open all the secrets. And Ramakant Maharaj says it's an open secret. Selfless self opens. And all you're doing is just remaining with your selfless self, remaining with the sense of presence, knowing that, okay, this sense of presence, this formlessness, I'm the knower of this, and therefore, all of this that's appearing on it, there is no need for me to pay attention. There is no need for me to dive into this. I can operate quite nicely in the world, being totally unconcerned with the world, because I'm remaining with myself, and all of this is appearing on that spontaneous presence and is absolutely illusion. And yet, again, this body is whatever's in front of it. Do your job, do your duties. You can't just sit outside and be like, okay, I'm selfless self and I'm not going to work anymore. Not going to do anything. And then suddenly you're homeless. Yeah, you're selfless self still, but now the illusion has become a little bit, you know, oh, now I'm homeless in the illusion. I have to worry about eating. And then there you go. Now the mind, ego, intellect is really going to be like, well, do we really want to look at what selfless self did? It has me out on the street homeless.
Yeah.
So, and you don't want to, as you know, the spiritual guys who say, okay, I'm going to go off to India and smoke bong hits and play bongos. And that's going to be deeper into my selfless self. No, because that's just trading one illusion for another illusion. And then there's a real grounded, I am somebody else. I am so free that I don't need work, and I'm just going to play bongos and smoke weed and chill out in India. But that's a huge spiritual I am somebody else, not really spiritual, but belief in being a spiritual I am somebody else, and a concept, like we talked about, the birth and death and life of this concept. This concept is born. It could have a very long life before you finally discard it, and it could be a long time lost way away from your selfless self. Everything out there is to vie for your attention and take your attention off yourself so that you don't remain with yourself. And I don't know, maybe that's done on purpose, who knows, but these things are appearing and they'll vie for your attention if at all you believe that you're somebody who can acquire something from the illusory world.
Yeah, I think that's what they mean by God is a jealous God. He doesn't want you getting involved in all this other stuff.
And seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all things will be added unto you. Yeah. Basically, remain with your selfless self, with that absolute presence. And see, the presence is kind of a reward, because that fragrance, as it talks about, that's not, you're the knower of that sense of presence, but that sense of presence is absolute peace, absolute bliss. I guess they call it Satchidananda, that it's just a self-knowing bliss.
Yeah.
And again, of course, there's still the touch of a self-knowing bliss, but this is the progressive step to remain in that Satchidananda, that absolute peace. And mantra, 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 then this too will be removed. This I am, this sense of your own self, this sense of presence, will also be removed. The love to be. You know, when you see, like Maharaj says about the ants, and you pour the water, selfless self in the form of an ant wants to survive. But when you know yourself in a real sense, and you know that you are not body, you were not body, you're not going to remain the body, then the being that's holding the body is no longer something that you're desiring to hold on to at all costs. Because the being arose from your selfless self, from the formless sense, and you know, I'm the knower of this. If I know this, that means I was prior to it, and it's not needed. And this is all spontaneous. It's not intellectual. Like you just know yourself in a real sense. Mantra, 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 mantra. In every situation. You know, like Andrew, you were saying, like, you know, clients, when the clients look like, you know, things are not going well and this might happen and that might happen, that's the time. Mantra, mantra, remain with your selfless self. If you're bored at home doing nothing for this time or whatever, selfless self, selfless self. You're stuck in traffic and you start to get irritated, selfless self, selfless self. Mantra. Because you're testing the spiritual knowledge that's been given to you by your own self. Are you going to act, step forward with courage, knowing that Master has said the world is illusion and that you are Brahman, Atman, Paramatman, Master? Nothing is there. Or are you going to shrink back and say, ooh, it's nice that selfless self is there and I enjoy going to selfless self or feeling selfless self, but this needs my immediate attention.
It really helps when you have that point of view that, you know, there's in the Bhajans, there's a sentence that says, the conclusion of the Bhajan, it says, everything is myself.
Yep.
And, you know, it takes the hostility away from whatever's going on in one's, you know, one's reality, kind of, because it's if it's all myself, you know, it's ultimately for my own good. So
yes,
there's, you know, it just really creates a sort of takes away that hostility and that fear, because then all of a sudden everything is in service physically to oneself, you know.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's to be, you know, like maybe it's a lesson when, you know, it's, you know, myself coming at me to teach me something, to straighten me out, you know, whatever, you know, it's kind of like set me free, I guess.
Where the entire world is a projection on your spontaneous presence through the ideas and the concepts and beliefs that you may be projecting through. When these less, then you're projecting this world cleanly, and you are all the characters, all of them, and everything's, you're all of them. So it is no them and you and this and that and this point of view and this position. It's just, as Maharaj says, as a drama. You do your part as the actor in the moment, spontaneously in the drama, but you're not so held up in it, because there will be a scene change and all the actors will go home on their separate ways. So there's no need to get upset or get worried or get frustrated with any of the characters in the drama, because the curtain closes on that scene and it's all finished. And from the ideas, beliefs, and concepts you're holding about yourself is how that world is projected, how you're seeing. How that seer is formless, completely universal. But the beliefs and the ideas and the concepts that are being held, that are projecting, you know, it's like, if I believe that I'm a body and you're a body and we're separate and I need something from you, or I'm worried you're going to get something from me, then duality is right away come in. But the way to erase all of that is through mantra. There's no I am somebody else created, so there can't be other, because there's no position that this form is taking as a somebody.
Yeah, it's hard to get that, especially when you think about Trump.
Well, again, mantra, and I don't watch the news, so I don't know. Like, a lot of people are saying, oh, there was a terrible shooting in Florida and all this kind of stuff. I don't watch the news at all.
Oh.
I mean, I just don't. I'm not in, because I know, you know, why feed the false and give more concepts and more ideas and more beliefs about something that absolutely is not true? let's see. I noticed today that looking at a squirrel, it was the same principle. It was the same principle as me looking at me through the squirrel's eyes. Of course, thought started to turn it into something as if known. Even Trump is the same kind of mind as mine. Yeah, I like watching squirrels, actually. Any kind of, like, nature-type living creatures. You feel your presence in everything. All the time it's being projected. That recognition in the projection that you're behind the eyes and ears of every single solitary form that you're meeting, whether it be a squirrel or whether it be somebody at work that you don't seem to like so much. You are behind the eyes and ears of every single being.
Even Trump, actually.
Even Trump.
That's the hardest thing.
It's just as if you dreamt. You know, if you had a dream, even worse, if you had a dream and there was a dictator there that was having people killed and doing terrible, terrible, terrible things, but you're dreaming. This is a much longer dream, but in the shorter dream, you wake up and all of it's gone. Again, Arjuna and Krishna on the battlefield, go ahead and kill those guys. Nobody's dying. Nothing's happening. You do what is right in front of you. And don't take an ego. That was a huge thing Arjuna said. Don't, or Krishna said, don't sit there and say, I'm a great warrior and I'm cutting down these men and how great I am, because that's taking an ego that I am a doer. In reality, you're not a doer, but if you take the ownership of doing, then you've taken it. If you take the ownership that these bad things are occurring and this is happening in the world and all this, then you're going to feel that it's real. And you're going to lose touch with your selfless self, knowing that, again, you're the dreamer. And the formlessness, these things are just happening. And again, it's your world. Seen through the ideas, beliefs, and concepts you're holding about yourself. I mean, I can watch news events and things that are very horrible, and there's a feeling, of course, like, oh, that's not good, that's terrible. But it's turned off immediately. Like, okay, turned it off, and there's no more thought about it. It's just in the moment, oh, that's not good. There's not a dwelling on it. There's not a rehashing it in my mind. Wow, the world's getting worse. And then I start to talk to my friends. Oh, my God, can you believe this is happening in the world and this and that? And I just, again, our cycle of birth and death. We born this concept, and now we have a long life of suffering of this concept. We're sharing this concept with other people, then death, and we have some new terrible concept to go through. Forget about all the concepts. And don't sit there, and say, oh, I should really feel this way, or I should do that. If you're motivated to do something about some kind of situation, it'll occur, but you don't have to be the doer of it. It'll happen through you. Not a thought process of, oh, I'm going to go put signs out and do this. No, if you find yourself hammering and putting signs, then that's part of something.
Yeah,
but there's no doership of it. I'm sorry, go.
Well, if you were, like, say, a congressman or something, or a senator, let's say, and that's your job. You'd be like Arjuna. You'd be like, okay, my job is to go out there and make gun control laws. You know what I mean? So in that way, you might, but not as a doer of it, but just as an arising, because it arose out of your responsibility as a senator.
Yeah, and again, doing your job, doing your duties. And it's very dangerous to think of others. That's because there are really no others. It's concentrating on your own self. But yes, it's whatever you're doing, you do the best that you can in front of you and you leave it. And then you're just, because if I sit there and I say, well, this senator, because then I'm going to have an expectation of how I believe he should do something in the illusory world and allow, again, birth of concept, long life of suffering, death of a concept until I have a new concept to torture myself. Not, The Maharaj says all the time, even in the spiritual journey, like it's just you. Just you. Don't think about another person or another, how they're doing or how this is happening or why do they do this or how come they're not as far ahead or this person's more progressing, because that's all ego and separation. Concepts that are separating you from yourself and further belief in a body identification. Really cementing a body identification because how the world is relating to me again. I am somebody else is supposed to be dissolved, and it will dissolve with mantra meditation. Because remember, anytime you're there to form a question, there has to be a form of a questioner to form a question. Why is this happening? Well, there's something that's happening, that there's a me, a position, a pinpoint on the map that's observing this happening based on the point of view that I believe myself to be having. If I didn't have a point of view, if I didn't have this pin on the map, no question would arise as to why this is happening, because there wouldn't be an I am somebody else that this could happen to. It's just a happening through just happening. And then you're totally unconcerned with the world because that mental chatter is not believed in that, oh, this is terrible. All it needs is one little concept. That's why, like Maharaj says, when you're in the ashram, it's like shockingly death silence in your head. And then as soon as you leave the ashram, he says, keep remaining with your selfless self, remaining with your selfless self. Don't allow the world to start impressing on you. Remain with your selfless self. He talks about taking pictures at the ashram so you can kind of bring that back with you. Oh, yes, ashram and this, and remain with my selfless self, remaining with that sense of presence.
If you look at, like when you, but you still sort of, you observe the world around you, everyone in it doing what they're doing and so forth. And so basically, it's just seeing it happen. It's like not putting a value judgment on it. It's like no opinion for or against. Basically, it's just seeing what's happening, and it's knowing that everyone, including oneself, is being just, projected, basically.
Yes. We talked about before the camera. The camera with no film in it, not developing later on, just taking pictures of everything. Taking pictures. That's the witnessing. You can't not witness. It's there. You're witnessing, but there's no effort in witnessing. You're taking pictures with a camera and never developing the film.
Yeah.
Nor is there any interest in developing the film except in the moment. Oh, look at that. Click, click, click. Look at these geese. I'm observing the geese in the moment, spontaneously without a me, just an observation of the geese and how they're flying and landing on the water. So I'm taking pictures. And I'm really into the moment as the moment is occurring. But then I put the camera away and I walk to the next thing and I take pictures of the squirrels. But it's finished. And that's in everything. Again, perfect example Maharaj uses. I'm thirsty. Mind, ego, intellect. Intellect makes decision. Have a drink of water. Ego is action. Drink the water. Put the water down. Not thinking about the water anymore. That's everything. Spontaneous action.
Oh, here's another thing from Keith. When you mentioned killing, reminds me of Kurosawa's movie Ran, where it's just a lot of people killing themselves, each other, and he turns into a thing of beauty. I was also thinking today about how we really actually think and believe we can and do know what is right, but everyone seems to know what is right.
Yeah, again, to have a know what is right, there has to be an I am somebody else taking a position. Right action comes spontaneously. And I think it's Nisargadatta Maharaj that says what is right is remaining with your selfless self, and what is wrong is getting lost in the illusion. I mean, if you remain with your selfless self, wrong actions are probably, you know, all these, like Maharaj says, the 6 spiritual qualities, they naturally manifest themselves in you because they're ridding of all this kind of sense of I am somebody else and all of this. Again, it's only progressive steps, but it's a way to see, like, okay, forgive and forget, and this, I forget all of them now, but, oh yeah, the devotion. The devotion should be so powerful. I mean, not saying to do this, but in my own self, I have pictures of the masters. I bow to them, Raja Diraj, Satgurunath, Sri Bhavsab Maharaj Ki Jai, and then all 4 with Ramakant Maharaj. I lay my hand or my head on my hands as I did when I was bowing to Ramakant Maharaj's feet. So that's the form devotion of the formlessness. Read Das Bodh, then go to sleep. So it's constant. It's just constant devotion. Devotion to the selfless self in the various forms that it's appeared to give knowledge of the selfless self. This happens spontaneously, just like the bhajans. It's just spontaneous. You walk out, you know, when I'm headed to the train, it's just put the headphones on, listen to Kakadarate. Then morning bhajans to eat my lunch. Evening bhajans on my commute home. And one could say it's really ridiculous how much time and effort is spent in devotion and in all of this, but there's no time and there's no effort. It's beautiful. It's just remaining with your selfless self, and these spontaneous devotion is just occurring, and it's beautiful. It's just this, it's wonderful. You're worshiping your own selfless self formlessly and in form. The qualities and the qualityless. And all the time, remaining with your selfless self. And the recognition and the projection from the images of the masters is incredibly powerful.
Do you think there's a transmission? Because sometimes I look at Ramana Maharshi and it feels like he's looking back at me.
What's you?
Yeah, well, that's right.
Yeah, it's the recognition and the projection.
Yeah.
Ramana Maharshi was just another form of your own selfless self. Nisargadatta Maharaj, just another form of your own selfless self. As a matter of fact, on the spiritual journey, there were many times where I started to really, as I was recognizing in the projection Nisargadatta Maharaj, there was some sense that mind wanted to take that I think I was him in a previous life. You know what I mean? It's like, because there's such, but it's true. You are, you're this recognition in the projection. But I am Nisargadatta Maharaj. I am Ramakant Maharaj. I am Ramana Maharshi. I am Jesus. I am Buddha. All these things, I think Maharaj says it best, where all the saints are within you.
That's very good. Yeah.
They're forms of reality, but reality is formless. There was just a video about that Maharaj had. Reality has no shape or form, but these are the forms of reality.
So then you'd have to say the sinners are in you too.
Absolutely you do. Absolutely. And it is absolutely, absolutely everything and everyone that has ever been and ever will be is nothing appearing in you. And when identified with, appears to be something.
But then you're giving it that power. Then
through attention and belief.
no.
And from a limited sense, like sky doesn't know it's sky. So there's a no knowing. There's, you know, how you were prior to being this, I don't know. How you will be after leaving the body, I don't know. Then I don't know now. There is not an I am somebody else to know anything. No knowledge is knowledge. Knowledge means just to know yourself in a real sense. And the loop is complete without the cycle of birth and death of concepts. All body knowledge has to be dissolved. This I am somebody else and all the things that it believed it was doing, all the things it believed it was learning, forget it.
Sooner or later, you have to forget it all, correct?
Yeah.
Keith says, yeah, but what about all the wonderful time and devotion we constantly are thinking and believing we know or identify as such? Such devotion comes with a sense of mistaken conviction.
I mean, all of it goes and comes. The body, the mind, the ego, the intellect, the sense of being, all these things that you're currently using are going to disappear because they're appearances on your spontaneous presence. So all the things that you believed you did and all the memories and all the wonderful experiences, all the terrible experiences, all the everything will go back where all experience ends. There you are. The knower of the being and the non-being. And knowledge, devotion is to know yourself in a real sense. As you know yourself in a real sense, that's when it comes time to leave the body, you're not, you're not shivering in fear. You're not experiencing leaving the body or dying. And even if somebody says, like on the video that I posted, it's funny because you can see Nisargadatta Maharaj smile so big when he says, when all these things leave, they will say I'm dead. And he's like, and then he says, do you agree? You know, it's so beautiful. And Balseb Maharaj, clapping, 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 clapping. Because there won't be any fear that what is leaving never was. All the ideas, all the beliefs, all the memories, all that kind of stuff was just in the dream, and now the dream's over. It was a really long dream. Inside the really long dream, this body-mind form had many, many nights of dreaming, but it came out of nothing, looked like something, dissolves back into nothing. So nothing's being lost. There's nothing there. It's just waking up from the dream. The knower of the being and the non-being is as it always was, where all of this appeared on you.
And then the knower goes off as well. Eventually,
There's nothing to know.
There's nothing to know.
It's just your own selfless self. So you're not creating any experiences of inside something and knowing something other through the sense of body.
So, like there's Power Brahman, which is everything, and for that reason, it doesn't even know itself. Then it knows itself through the projection as Brahman, and then that goes off, eventually returns back to Power Brahman. Is that the way it works? Or?
And something in the nothing. In giving the details of Para Brahman and Brahman and all of that, it's just, there's nothing. I guess you can call that Para Brahman, where there's no attributes, no knowing, because there's nothing other than it to know. Then there's the something, which is the activity, the world, the projection. First is the projection, the sense of presence. I am. This sense of presence, all of this appears on this sense of presence, this body, mind, ego, intellect, world, all of this. But you, the self, Parabrahman, whatever you want to, is here. And all this is, and then these just dissolve back to nothing. And you know this, when you know yourself in a real sense, there can't be death. It just doesn't make sense. The formlessness is the same as the breath in and out. The breath isn't going anywhere. It's everywhere. It's also inside this form and outside this form and all around this form. There's nowhere for it to go. The last breath, breathing out, that's it. But it's everywhere. So you can consider knowing yourself in a real sense, the body, okay, you're leaving the body. But that you are, that you know yourself in a real sense. No knowledge is knowledge, and knowledge means just to know yourself in a real sense. You'll know that no one's dying and no one was ever born because you're returning to that. And then that returns to nothing, which is everything.
One of the one phrase from Das Bow that really caught my attention, and it's like, it kind of like, it's what I really long for, actually. It's when he speaks about the attributeless power woman. It's like, that's where my attention always goes. I don't know, it's just like, there's a longing for that. And that's really nothing.
Yeah, discarding all the things that are not. It's just, the attributes player Brahman is just discarding all the attributes that have been added on to that attributelessness, which all of those attributes are illusory attributes, so it's very easy. They never were.
Right.
And again, wake up from the dream. Boom, the whole dream world's gone. There's a long dream. I was born, I'm dying. That's the long dream. Wake up. I was there prior to the idea of this birth, and I'll be there after the idea of this. But how was I? I don't know. There's nothing to know. The whole reason that there's knowledge or knowing yourself in a real sense is through the projection of other, moving around and doing things in this world for the sense to be, the love to be. The love to be creates the entire world and all the movement in the world. But that love to be can be seen as not needed. And while you're in this illusory world, you can live from the place of reality, from the selfless self. And then this illusory world finishes and you're still your selfless self. There's just nothing that can be used as an instrument to know other or to know anything.
I work in the world of love to be. When you work with couples who are getting married,
Indeed.
I ask them questions about the relationship. Some get to know you questions, 6 basic questions, and it's always about that the adventure, they love to do things. It's just that whole love of being. That's that they're revolving around. It's just really funny to see. I mean, it's myself as well. I think it's basically what we all have. We're dealing with, in a sense. Getting free from that, moving beyond that.
Yes.
But, yeah.
Well, and as I'm sure you know, when people get married, they're married to the ideas and beliefs about themselves and the future that they're projecting. And then as the marriage progresses, they settle down in the reality, and they either get divorced, or at that time, then the love becomes a deeper love, and they're still moving forward, but there's no longer the pie in the sky. I'm married to my dream, my dream wife that's absolutely perfect in every way and all that, and I'm this perfect husband, because you live together, and that delusion of illusion is shattered by reality creeping in.
Yeah.
And that's where, like, you know, that's where the love is, because then you're acting spontaneously, basically. You're no longer acting through the illusory concepts of how you wanted this to be. You know, it's just like, okay, we're very comfortable, and there's a deeper love, and there's a passion, but it's not that idea of passion or that idea of, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And again, the same thing with the love to be for the body form that you're using. When you know yourself in a real sense, when the body falls, you still are. That's the big fear, is that when this body falls, I'm finished. You're not finished, because you were there prior. You will be there after. There will be nothing for you to know, but you are still there. And everything that you know now is just an illusion on your spontaneous presence. Again, the sky. If every single person on the planet disintegrated, I think we talked about that before, the big nuclear war, boom, everybody's gone. Sky is still sky. The idea that the other can give only beauty and love is shattered, and the same, I guess, goes for all objects of desire and value. Yeah, you're no longer chasing your tail of illusion. Because you know yourself in a real sense. Things can still be here, you know, you still have your house and all this, but you're not striving and giving yourself away for the illusion. You're remaining with your selfless self. And when it comes time to leave the body, you're not like, oh no, this is terrible, I'm leaving the body, because you were here for a time and now you won't be in this body form. But it's the same as waking up from the dream. All of it's finished, but the dreamer still is.
And I think all of us are moving towards that. That I think at the root of all of our conversation within all of us is that longing for that attributeless power Brahman, that discarding of everything. We're all moving in that direction ultimately. And again, you know, we're being moved in that direction. Actually,
the fire is there; it's just covered with ash, and Master removes the ash. Everything is removing this ash. Mantra removing this ash. Fire is there. The fire is the attributeless para-Brahman, just erasing until finally leaving the body. That's like the last layer. And then you are attributeless, because there's nothing other than yourself perceived in any way. There's no instrument to know anything other than. But again, just the formlessness. All of the form never was. Mind presents ideas, thoughts, concepts, and beliefs in form. Everything that you desire is in form. Everything that you expect to happen is in form. And all memories from the past are in form. And you are formless. So when they're presented to you, it's just discarded. And at first it's discarded through mantra. When you and the mantra are one, you remain with your formless sense of self, and all these form things are discarded. Then it's like Maharaj says, the drama, each scene, all the actors, you're acting as yourself, doing this right now. Scene changes, new scene, different thing, different actors on the stage, you're doing your part. But as Maharaj says, when you leave after you've done a couple of scenes and it's time to finish, you leave it all. You know you were just the actor in that. And the selfless self knows it was just the actor in this play called life. In the illusory world, being projected from the formlessness, the manifest that's appearing in the unmanifest. Okay, are these talks public, would it be okay for novices to hear this? I post this on emotionallysober.net, which is the website that I told Maharaj that we were going to kind of have all these different little snippets and the full talks up there, and also on the YouTube channel. So anybody can listen, but again, it's selfless self that will guide itself to what it's knowing or where it needs to be. I think it was also, you know, those with ears can hear and those that can't won't.
Self-selecting.
Pardon me?
Self-selecting.
Yeah, the self-selecting, exactly. I think it was when Jesus was giving his sermons and stuff right in front of the Romans, and he was saying, well, they're not going to get this because this is not meant for them. This is meant for you. It's the same thing. The selfless self is speaking to itself, and all of this is illusory world. It's all the selfless self. So others or people outside, even when they're commenting, there are many comments who say, you know, what the hell are you doing this thing? And that's okay, because there's not an I am somebody else here that's presenting something for people. It's just speaking and listening, and they're taped and put on the website and different things just to freely give. And some people will be commenting, oh, this is so wonderful. Some people, oh, this is so terrible. And again, okay.
Okay. I think that might be the last word.
Oh, yeah, it's 9:08. Huh. See?
Okay.
This scene is now finished.
Okay.
Great. Thank you very much. Yeah.
All right.
That was a good talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good. Everybody,
Okay.
enjoy your
Good night.
evening. Bye-bye.
I'll see you. Bye. Thank you.
Next time.